What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we're heading back to Sebring International Raceway. There's an IndyCar test going on and I really want to check that out, so I'm bringing you guys along for the ride. Unlike last video, this time I want to give you guys a little bit of background and history on the infamous Sebring International Raceway. Before its current life as a racetrack, Sebring International Raceway was actually Hendricks Army Airfield. So Hendricks Army Airfield was a World War II airfield that was used for training B-17 pilots from 1941 to 1946. After the war ended, an aeronautical engineer by the name of Alec Ullman so happened upon the former airfield, looked at the long straightaways and thought to himself, you know what? This would be a great place to put on a race. Alec Ullman was very familiar with the 24 Hours of Le Mans that took place in France and the European style endurance racing, and was inspired, and he wanted to bring that same style of racing back to the United States. When Alex saw the long straightaways at the Hendricks Airfield, he thought it would be a fantastic place to put together a race here in the United States. With the support and help of locals here in Sebring, Florida, Alec Ullman put on the first ever race at Sebring International Raceway on December 31st, 1950. That race was a 6-hour endurance race. And that race was won by Fritz Koster and Ralph Deshawn in a Crosley Hotshot. Now, that little Crosley Roadster winning a 6-hour race against Ferraris, MGs, Fiats, Cadillacs, Jaguars, that was basically a little story of David versus Goliath, essentially. What made that first race in Sebring unique was Alec Ullman decided to implement a performance index measure. Now, what that performance index measure did was essentially balance smaller engine cars with larger engine, more powerful cars to make it, kind of level the playing field. Now, the story of how the Crosley got into that race is actually fascinating. So the Crosley was a last-minute entry the day before the race. Another racer needed tires for his car in the race and was calling different dealerships around in the Florida area. One of the dealerships he called was a Crosley dealership, and that Crosley dealership had the tires that racer needed. So what did they do? They got the son of the dealer, Vic Sharp Jr., to hop into one of the Crosleys on the lot and bring the tires to Sebring for that racer. Now, when Vic Sharp Jr. got to the track, the racer looked at the Crosley, seeing how small it was, and was thinking from the perspective of the regulations that were for that race, and realized that Crosley actually would have an advantage because of its small size and its small engine capacity. The racer convinced Sharp to enter the Crosley into the race, but there was one problem. Sharp did not have the required racing license needed to run the Crosley. So Sharp and the racer found just two guys, Fritz Koster and Ralph Deshawn. Fritz Koster and Ralph Deshawn started the race with that little Crosley. They started it at the rear of the field, and that's kind of where they remained. From what I've inferred from the historical texts, for most of the race, that thing was noticeably slow on track. I mean, it was not a race prep vehicle by any means. That little Crosley was so underpowered, they had that thing floored. They never lifted from the gas, and they kept it in high gear. So that little Crosley was singing at 7,500 RPM for 6 straight hours, and they never braked. That's right, they never braked once during the entirety of that race. Well, I guess if they needed to pit, but other than that, on the actual track, they did not brake. On the long straightaways like this, they would crouch forward into the little Crosley so that the wind wouldn't act as a parachute. And then when they approached the turns, they would sit up in the Crosley, and the wind would basically, their bodies would act as a parachute in the wind, slowing them down. And then when they got on the straight again, they'll crouch forward again. So it is just incredible what those guys did for 6 hours. Literally the definition of all gas, no brakes. After the 6 hours, it was determined and declared that the little Crosley was the winner of the first ever race at Sebring International Raceway. Now, fast forward a few years to December 12, 1959. The first ever Formula One Grand Prix in the United States was held right here at Sebring International Raceway. That race was won by Bruce McLaren. It was his first ever Formula One race win. And if that last name sounds familiar, well, yeah, it's the same McLaren that founded McLaren. Unfortunately, the race was not considered a financial success, and because of that, Formula One did not return to Sebring. A good portion of this racetrack still takes place over the former World War II airfield. And that World War II airfield was constructed in concrete sections with very, very large seams. What that basically means is this track is super rough and super bumpy. In an interview, two-time Formula One champion and current Formula One driver Fernando Alonso stated that the bumps at this circuit are what give it its character. And because of that, Sebring is world-renowned. Alright guys, we're here at the track and I hear cars. I hear race cars. I hear Indy cars. Oh, there goes one. This is so freaking cool, guys. Like, to see Indy cars here. And this is my first time seeing Indy cars. I've never seen Indy cars before, so, you know, super curious to see how they look in person. Ooh, I think there's a caution. There's a safety car. What happened? We got the safety crew there. Looks like an orange car. Might be in the barriers. Yeah, it's a little colder this morning in Sebring. It's about 60 degrees right now, more or less. These cars probably just came out on the track and their tires are going to be a little cold. So obviously you can't push the car as much as you would once the tires and everything's warmed up in the racing surface. So sometimes things like this happen where the car just loses grip and slide off. All right, what do you guys say we head to our favorite spot over at Turn 7 and get a better view of these machines? And that's going to be the video, guys. This is the IndyCar test here in Sebring, Florida. I hope you enjoyed the little bit of history. I also gave about the track. It was interesting for me as well. I learned some really cool things I didn't know. Some really important events in American racing history. So, yeah, man, that McLaren looks so beautiful. This is so cool. My first time seeing Indy cars in person. One of these days, I'm going to have to go to a race. For sure, I would love to do the Indianapolis 500 someday. Watching it, not running it, obviously. So, yeah guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed seeing these cars on the track. And until the next time, as always, peace.